here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's April 5th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now that the weather has gotten warmer with spring kicking in, police are on the lookout for more car accidents. According to figures released by the National Police Agency on Thursday, the number of drowsy driving-related car accidents in the past 5 years has surpassed 10,000. In other words, we saw 5.9 of these car accidents each day. Saturday was the worst day of the week for such accidents. Officials also found that the number of deaths caused by drowsy driving was 1.5 times higher than deaths from driving under the influence. Moving on, for the first time since the pandemic, restaurant sales in Korea last year surpassed 100 trillion won, which is roughly $740 billion US dollars. That was 9% up from the year before and also 1 trillion more than what was recorded in 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic. A global market analysis firm analyzed this to be from rising food prices rather than more people dining out. Though the number of people who decided to dine out last year did increase by 3.6%, this was still nearly half the amount we've seen in other parts of the world, which saw a 7.8% on-year surge. The latest analysis also shed light to how the country's buffet-style family restaurants garnered much popularity thanks to their reasonable prices. It also forecasts Korea's burger restaurants to further expand. And lastly, as the country's total fertility rate is hitting a new all-time low each year, some have cast gloomy forecasts that the country will disappear as a whole. Last year, South Korea's total fertility rate came down from 0.78 to 0.72. Statistics Korea believes that this figure, which estimates the amount of babies a woman is expected to have in her lifetime, will come down to 0.65 next year. They added that by the year 2072, we'll see the total population of Korea come down from what's 51 million to 36 million, and that's around a 15 million drop in just 5 decades. And there's many factors that this could lead to a demographic crisis, and that includes an aging society and a negative perception towards childbirth. And we've been covering many reasons as to what could have contributed to Korea's birth rate, but in our newsfeed today, I'd like to focus on the consequences this could bring about. If we continue to see a low birth rate, we would obviously see less schools, and some professors believe that by the year 2040, half of all universities in Korea won't be even able to fill half of their freshman quota. Less kids would also affect our defense capabilities. Back in 2006, we used to have at least 540,000 able-bodied Army personnel, and this came down to 365,000 this year. And in the year 2040, we may see this figure not even reach 300,000. So we are bound to see more consequences, but with a depleting population, what are some consequences that we may be expecting?
Well, it's a really serious situation, to be quite honest with you. I mean, the fact that the government is trying to help, but there obviously needs to be a lot more done about it. Even as a father of one, we don't plan to have any more, so we're not exactly contributing any more to this statistic. But obviously, like you said, we could have trouble running the country. Not just that, you'll lose jobs as well as companies will lose workers. Maintaining infrastructure, maintaining just simple things like around the city. We'll become less of a tourist place because we have no one to fix our iconic areas of South Korea. Think about if we had less people working in the import-export industry. That's going to be a very, very difficult time for Korea. It's really, I mean, we've said this millions of times, but it's really time for the government to really try and make something happen with this situation.
And I don't think it should be just the government. I think the public should be well aware about the consequences. And the only reason why we've been repeatedly emphasizing the consequences here is for the public to be better on board with the severity of the crisis, for us to think about solutions that we can actually execute on a daily basis. Now, what are your thoughts on this, Ki-hoon?
You know, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, this has been an ongoing demographic issue in the country, and the numbers are just looking ever more depressing. And I'm just glad that we're seeing more statistics come out to further emphasize the seriousness of where the country is heading towards. But at the end of the day, I think it is really up to the women to choose to have children, not so much the men. So besides getting married, I think more women need to feel the need to have a baby and feel more supported from many different areas. Of course, the husbands need to take on more household duties, but the government as a whole, like Walter said, has to come up with measures to encourage and embrace more new mothers by making houses obviously much more affordable. And in terms of women's careers, I mean, I think more companies need to better accommodate maternity leaves and reduce the gender wage gap, which is, another serious issue here in Korea. And I also hope that, it's not too little too late in South Korea. And we all need to keep in mind, a happy wife is a happy life.
It definitely is. And you mentioned a great point there. I do think the government and the public as a whole should tackle gender imbalance issues. We mentioned a few days ago on NewsGen that there's already a disparity in the amount of working moms pouring into their time, into their child in terms of time compared to working dads. So it all starts from there. Our perception towards gender imbalance should be the first step to go. Now, we hope to see some developments there, but in the meantime, let's switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day now. There is a saying in Korea, sleep is the best remedy for everything. And that's how important sleep seems to be. And we're going to be talking about our generation's sleeping patterns today. Before we go there, let me ask our panelists how many hours they sleep each night. So what time do you guys usually fall asleep and get up to?
Oh, sorry. I fully agree with the saying, sleep is the best remedy to everything. I have my own saying of work hard, play harder, rest the hardest. So for me, like resting closely relates to sleeping, not just lying on my bed, being awake on my smartphone or, just watching TV. So anyway, going back to your question, I would say I go to bed a bit before midnight on most days. And I think, of course, I can't be 100% sure. I do kind of fall asleep within 30 minutes on average.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So I consider myself a little healthy. But whenever I have news during like today or like a morning work, I get up around 6 in the morning, giving me at least 8 hours of sleep on a daily basis. But, a lot of people are saying these days, like experts are saying, 7 hours is the magic number for most adults. So you don't really have to necessarily sleep 8 hours a day. But I think it just shows that, basically, I can withstand being hungry and even hangry at times. But when I don't have enough sleep, when I can't get enough sleep the night before, it feels like hell throughout the day, and I would do anything to just catch up on the sleep. So I'm a sleep person,
I completely agree with you. Play hard, but sleep harder. Because I can't function the next day if I don't get enough sleep. But what about you, Walter?
Yeah, so for me, actually, while you were doing your newsfeed, my eye was twitching, and when that happens, it means I haven't got enough sleep. So since having a baby, it's obviously very limited. So, however, I do make sure I try and get enough sleep, and that usually means as soon as my baby falls asleep, I'm not too long after. Back in the day where if I had to, I could play games or on my PlayStation, or I could go on the web and surf and whatever. Now I save that time, my free time, for sleep. So I usually jump into bed around 9 p.m. And then fall asleep pretty quick after that recently, to be honest with you. And I wake up around 5:30 a.m. every morning, and that's just out of habit now. Now that's enough sleep in regards to the amount, the quantity, but the quality, I have to say, is pretty poor. I always wake up in the morning early, but I've turned into an early bird, but that's not due to my choice.
But compared to other Koreans out there, I do think you guys are getting enough sleep because a recent study found that young Koreans don't sleep as much as those abroad. So Kyun, why don't you walk us through the latest findings?
Yes, sure. It's no secret that Koreans don't sleep much in general. Not only do we have, above average annual working hours among OECD nations, we're also obviously sleeping less hours compared to other nations. And ironically, I think this contradicts the Korean saying about sleeping the best remedy. So Koreans' ongoing sleep deprivation has been reported numerous times on foreign media outlets, and it hasn't shown any improvement since, so especially among MZers. To give our viewers a better understanding, let's take a look at the screen. According to data collected from Munis, a sleep tech startup in 2023, the average sleeping time for those born between 1980 and 2010 was only 5 hours and 49 minutes. So they're falling asleep at almost 2 in the morning and waking up around 8 a.m. This is around 2 hours less than the average sleeping time of South Koreans. although I don't sleep that late, I know one person who does, who is my brother. I live with him. And he has to wake up much earlier than me on weekdays, but he usually sleeps after I go to bed. So sometimes I see him on weekends just sleeping throughout the whole day. And it seems like he's kind of hibernating or something. But I think this is very common among many MZers.
Exactly.
They don't sleep during the weekdays because of work, obviously, and other commitments. So they just leave the weekends to just rest. Not rest, but just sleep.
Sleep. I think resting and sleeping is quite
very
different there.
different.
A lot of my friends do the same as well. They dedicate Saturday to play, but Sunday they have to sleep the whole day because they
Exactly.
have a long week ahead of them. Walter, would you like to add on to this trend?
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat some of what Keegan said, but it's, it's common knowledge that it's recommended between 7 and 9, even though experts do say it's around 7. Obviously 9 hours I think is too much for me, to be honest with you, but there's no secret that we Koreans, we just don't get enough, and we could probably put that down to, well, some of the blame onto our competitive society that we live in and the rough working hours that some of us have. Plus, in order to keep that work energy up, we need to turn to caffeine, which caffeine then stops us from sleeping. I mean, for me, it doesn't. I've got immune to caffeine recently. Another reason that people tend to get less sleep is maybe due to the fact of their smartphones as well. Throughout the night, I know a lot of people do this. Even I do this. We go on this YouTube wormhole or this binge watching on OTT platforms. That's going to keep us up. Next thing you know, it's 12 a.m. and you've got to get up in 5 hours or less, to be honest with you, for some people. So we can also blame our smartphones for our lack of sleep and quality.
Oh, right. And also, I do think it's also because of business operation hours. Whenever I go abroad, for instance, to Australia or in the States, a lot of restaurants and bars close by 6 or even 7. But here in Korea, the nightlife is so active and vibrant that it actually starts from like 10 p.m. So that's why we're delaying our sleep hours. So now I'd like to put on a contrary perspective. On the contrary, many young people in the States seem to be hitting the hay much early. So why do you guys think this is the case? And could you elaborate on what the sleeping patterns are like for millennials and Gen Z in other parts of the world?
Right. So an article from Wall Street Journal reported that many young Americans are tucking themselves in earlier than before and also sleeping for much longer. So in 2022, adults in their 20s slept an average of 9 hours and 28 minutes of sleep. That's a lot. And
Yeah.
in January 2023, according to an analysis of more than 2 million total Sleep Number smart bed customers, between the ages of 18 and 34, they went to bed at 10:18 p.m. That's when Koreans start partying.
Yeah, that's pre-game time.
So this is a huge difference to young Koreans and something that I think we all should be taking a little more seriously because it definitely has negative side effects in the long run, physically, mentally, and of course emotionally.
Emotionally too. That's how important sleep is. And it's quite fascinating to hear that the average is 9 hours and 28 minutes. It's an average there. Now what about you, Walter?
Well, I'd just like to add on to the fact that there is a funny article that I read not too long ago about something that happened in New York. Now, as we mentioned, New York people in America, I guess, get a lot more sleep than what we do in Korea. And these days, that seems to be a common trend. So much so that on New Year's Eve, there was a bar that opened extremely early for those who could, get off work early on the New Year's Eve, and actually closed before midnight so people could go home and sleep. So that's quite interesting because New York is nicknamed the city that never sleeps.
Exactly.
But now they're always sleeping. So I think that's quite interesting that they are now catering to those heavy sleepers.
Exactly. And instead of waiting till midnight and counting down from 5 all the way down to 1 to start the new year, people are choosing to sleep more. And that's how important sleep is. And I think it also has to do with our generation opting for healthy pleasure. We really prioritize our health. Now, we asked our viewers from different parts of the world to share their own sleeping patterns, from what time they fall asleep to what time they wake up and what their quality of sleep is like. If you take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Ramsey. Ramsey says, I usually go to bed at 11 p.m. My average sleep is around 7 hours as I try to wake up around 6 to do my morning routine. Leon says, I usually go to bed at around 10 and have an average of 8 hours of sleep. For me, getting a good night's sleep is important to function well in the day. Sword Keepsy said, usually I go to sleep at 2 a.m. to wake up at 7. It's clearly not enough for my body, and I think you're probably lying to yourself if you think it's enough in general. Now, to find out what it's like in other parts of the world, namely Taiwan, we have a live interview with a Gen Z coming up. Stay tuned. We're going to include another Gen Z in our talks. It's Sayu Wu from Kaohsiung in Taiwan. Welcome, Sayu.
Hello.
All right, Sayu, first, we'd like to share our deepest prayers to you and your family following the earthquake that hit Taiwan this week, and praying that the casualty toll doesn't rise anymore and Taiwan quickly recovers. And now, if we begin our interview, we'd like to focus on sleeping patterns in Taiwan. So as a Gen Z from this country, could you tell us how much sleep you usually get each day?
On average, I am for about 6 to 8 hours of sleep a day. When I have tests or find myself particularly busy, I might trim it down to around 6 hours to ensure I'm still productive and focused. However, during other
All
times
right,
when my
Sayu,
schedule
because of
allows,
technical difficulties, we are going to connect to Sayu a little bit later. Now, why don't we continue our talks by talking about sleeping patterns in other parts of the world? Why do you think sleep is such an important topic among our generation these days, Walter?
I think really sleep is the most important topic is because we are changing as a society. We realize that work-life balance is very necessary.
Yeah.
And part of the work-life balance, the life part in particular, is making sure that you get enough sleep. And that Keen and I, we grew up in Australia and everything starts early in the morning and finishes early in the evening. So we really prioritize our sleep over in Australia. Whether in Korea, I just found the fact that we have such good Wi-Fi that I can watch YouTube all night and it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's great, but yes, our society really needs our sleep in order for us to work for, I guess, what we want to do. As I said, back in the day, it was about just working.
Right.
Now we want a healthy work-life balance.
In summation, better socio-economic environments have
Exactly.
allowed us to really think about sleep as a necessity. And I also think it has to do with, you mentioned that there are more options out there, whereas in Australia, business operations shut down early. But in Korea, you know that there's this saying, 야식, meaning night food. You literally can order anything at night. The delivery services are just so advanced here, but also it has to do with more people staying up late to order and stuff. But I think nowadays, because our generation is opting for this healthy pleasure, they're really focusing on their diet and stuff like that. And their awareness of having this yashik isn't that good, we are seeing business sales come down in that part as well.
You could fit food into any situation, could you?
I really can.
You're such a foodie.
I'm such a foodie. It's a very important barometer for me to be evaluating any societal trend there. Now, Kyun, why do you think that sleep is such an important concept among our generation?
I think, like you say, a lot of people these days, we think so much about our health, and obviously that relates closely to how much quality sleep we get.
Right.
And I think, I also grew up in Sydney, Australia, very similar to Walter, and everything shuts down early, which means, we need to go to bed early. And I grew up having that kind of sleeping pattern. And I try to do that here in Korea as well. But I'll see a lot of people, they're always awake late into the night because most places are open 24/7, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same
I
time.
know.
And there's a lot of 회식, like get-togethers,
That's so true.
outings. And Koreans just like to go out, enjoy themselves, drink a lot throughout the night. And we have so many hangover cures that
We
support
do.
that. And that's why we drink so much coffee as well, because
Yes.
we're always sleep deprived and we need to wake up with a caffeine kick. Yeah, but I think sleep is so important because I feel it with my own body. If I don't get
Exactly.
enough sleep, I feel down. I feel very depressed.
Yeah, it's a little conflicting of a situation because the infrastructure we have, whether it's through a lot of yashik options out there, food, and like all the business operating, I think we do have so many options to play till night. But at the same time, our generation, because we offer healthy pleasure, we want sleep as well. And to find that balance, we're going to connect to Sai Yu again, who's had enough sleep. We heard that she sleeps 8 hours a day. So let's continue from there. Sai Yu, are you back on? Can we continue to talk to you?
yes,
All right, there you are,
I'm
Sayu.
okay.
All right, so Sayu, let me ask you the first question again. You said you sleep around 8 hours a day. How do you do that?
Uh, I sleep around 6 to 8 hours a day, and like when I have tests or find myself busy, I might trim it down to around 6 hours to ensure I'm still productive and focused. However, during other times when my schedule allows, I prioritize getting a full 8 hours of sleep. And I find that maintaining this balance helps me stay alert, energized, and able to tackle whatever challenges come my way.
So, how did you solidify this type of sleeping habit, and how has sleeping early affected your daily life?
Initially, it took some trial and error to figure out what works best for me. But once I realized the importance of sleep for my overall well being and productivity, I made it a priority. I set a consistent bedtime routine. I created a comfortable sleep environment and minimized screen time before bed. And so getting enough sleep not only boosts my energy and concentration, but also enhances my mood and decision-making abilities. I've
Eh,
noticed that I'm more productive during the day and overall just feel more balanced and centered.
That's
Yes.
excellent. And do you have one tip to the Korean youth who can't seem to fall asleep? As you know, you're a very good sleeper yourself. What is your one tip you could give in order for a better sleep?
I suggest that you can do like reading or meditating to signal to your body that it's time to wind down and make your environment as cozy and comfortable as you can.
And
Yes.
just understand that sleep is the way to go in order for you to have a productive day the next day. Thank you so much, Sayu. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
And ending off, given the fact that compared to the average Korean youth here, you guys have enough sleep, any tips on how to better ensure quality sleep?
I totally agree with what Sayu just mentioned, but I really cannot function well without getting enough sleep. So it reduces my productivity, and my energy level as well. But I think getting the hours is really important, but also getting quality sleep is key, just like what Walter said before, from a comfortable bed, sheets, pillow, making a peaceful sleeping atmosphere, like by considering the temperature, humidity, and even ventilation. That's what I do. And it could help people, fall asleep much quicker and deeper to feel, I guess, more rejuvenated the next day, because a lot of active things happen during the day, not at night.
Right, that's so true. What about you, Walter?
Just me quickly, I usually read a book that makes me very drowsy because books are boring and they're not as exciting as YouTube. But yeah, or soothing music. I'm really into meditating as well. But yeah, reading a book, soothing music, they always seem to get me to sleep.
I would say go out for a jog, run a little, make your body physically exhausted, and then that will just make you hit the hay as soon as possible. Now, hopefully today's episode could encourage you to have better sleeping patterns. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon
Always a pleasure.
and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week. We are
News Generation.